Let's talk about a lie we've all been sold. The idea that if we're just nice enough, kind enough, or patient enough, we can love someone into changing. That lie is exhausting, especially when it comes to dealing with a narcissist, because being nice won't change a narcissist. In fact, it feeds them. They thrive on your silence. They drink your self-doubt like water. Every time you swallow your truth just to keep the peace, you give away a piece of yourself. And I get it. Niceness feels safer, less risky than confrontation, easier than setting a boundary that might trigger their rage or their withdrawal. You think, if I'm kind enough, they'll see how much I care. They'll finally treat me better. We've been taught, especially those of us raised to be peacekeepers, caretakers, or the good one, that being nice is the gold standard of character. Smile, don't make waves, be easy to be around. But here's what we're not told. Niceness without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. There's a difference between being genuinely kind and being chronically nice. Genuine kindness comes from a place of groundedness, wholeness, and choice. Niceness, the kind that's driven by fear, guilt, or the hope of earning love, is often a survival strategy. It's armor. And when we use niceness to avoid hard conversations, to tiptoe around someone else's dysfunction, or to stay silent when something violates our integrity, that's not strength, that's self-abandonment. You can feel it when it's happening, can't you? That tightening in your chest when you say it's fine and it's not. That moment when you smile and nod, even though something inside you is screaming no. That lingering resentment when you say yes to something your body and soul wanted to say no to. We tell ourselves we're just being nice, that we're keeping the peace. But peace that costs your voice, your needs, your sanity, that's not peace. That's a performance. And here's the kicker. People who are manipulative, especially narcissists, count on your niceness. They rely on your reluctance to set boundaries. They know you'll say yes to avoid guilt. They've learned that if they apply pressure, you'll fold. Every time you do, you teach them how to treat you. It becomes a cycle, not because you're weak, but because you're trying to survive in an environment where honesty feels dangerous and boundary setting feels selfish. But boundaries aren't walls. They're the most honest expression of love we have for others and for ourselves. They say, this is where I end and you begin. They say, I can love you and still choose me. They say, I will not make myself small to protect your comfort. So let's be clear, being nice is not a boundary. In fact, in many relationships, especially with narcissists, niceness can become the mask we wear to stay safe while slowly losing who we are. Real courage is not in being agreeable. It's in being authentic, in speaking your truth even when your voice shakes, in walking away from what drains you, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your constant availability. You don't owe anyone your nice smile while your soul withers inside. You owe yourself your wholeness. You owe yourself your truth. You owe yourself you. We'll start with something uncomfortable but essential to say out loud. Narcissists are not in relationships for connection. They're in them for control. We want to believe, because we're wired for empathy and relationship, that deep down everyone just wants to love and be loved. And while that might be true on a human level, narcissists are not operating from that place. They don't pursue relationships to share intimacy, vulnerability, or mutual growth. They pursue relationships to secure dominance, to validate their ego, and to gain emotional leverage. It's not about love, it's about power. From the outside, they might appear charming, attentive, even intoxicating at first, but look closer and you'll see a pattern. The affection they offer isn't unconditional, it's transactional. It's a performance designed to hook you, because once you're invested, emotionally, financially, socially, the dynamic begins to shift. Control creeps in like a fog. They start criticizing you under the guise of just being honest. They withdraw affection when you express needs or emotions they don't like. They gaslight you, making you question your memory, your reactions, your reality, until you find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. They keep you walking on eggshells, trying to decode what version of them you'll get today. Why? Because unpredictability is a control tactic. If you're unsure of your footing, you're easier to manipulate. If you're constantly trying to regain their approval, you stay in their orbit. Narcissists don't want equals. They want admirers. They want enablers. They want people to reflect back the version of themselves they've worked hard to curate. And if you stop doing that, they either punish you or discard you. Connection, by definition, requires mutuality. It requires emotional availability, accountability, and vulnerability. But those are exactly the things narcissists run from, because true intimacy threatens the false self they've constructed. So while you're offering compassion, trying to meet them halfway, trying to talk it out, trying to love them into healing, they're often strategizing how to stay in control, how to shift blame, how to keep you invested just enough that you don't leave. It's not your fault. Your desire to connect is not the problem. It's just being used against you. And this is where the shift happens, when you finally understand that you cannot negotiate true connection with someone who's only interested in control. That your softness, your loyalty, your emotional labor will never be enough to change someone who sees love as a battlefield to win, not a bond to nurture. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they demand it. You don't need to stay in the dance just because they lead well. You get to walk away, not because you gave up on them, but because you finally chose you. So hear this clearly. Narcissists aren't hungry for connection. They're hungry for control. And you? You deserve real connection, the kind that holds, not harms, that sees you, not uses you, that invites you to grow, not shrink. Choose that. Choose you. Empathy is one of the most powerful forces in human connection. It's the ability to sit with someone in their pain, to understand their fear, to say, I see you, I feel with you, you're not alone. Empathy is what makes relationships meaningful. It's what helps us soften instead of judge, reach instead of retreat, hold instead of harm. But here's the hard truth, one that many of us have to learn the hard way. Empathy, when offered without accountability, doesn't heal, it enables. When we overextend empathy to people who continually harm us, disrespect our boundaries, or manipulate our emotions, we move from being compassionate to being complicit. And it's a slippery slope. We start making excuses for behavior that hurts us. They've had a hard life. I didn't mean it. They're just going through a tough time. If I just love them a little harder, they'll change. But empathy is not a free pass for bad behavior. It's not a substitute for consequences. It's not a shield that should be used to deflect responsibility. When we show up with empathy again and again for someone who refuses to take accountability, we're not helping them grow, we're giving them a soft place to land after every impact they make. We tell ourselves we're being loving, but often we're just afraid of what it means to say, this is not okay, this has to change. And if it doesn't, I will no longer be available to absorb the fallout. Why? Because setting that line feels unkind, harsh, cold, but it's not. Boundaries are not the opposite of empathy. They are the guardians of it. Without boundaries, empathy becomes a weapon, one used against you, by others, and sometimes by yourself. You start carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with. You begin confusing compassion with codependency, especially in relationships with narcissists or emotionally immature people. This dynamic becomes a pattern. They hurt you, you empathize, they avoid accountability, you smooth things over, they hurt you again. And the cycle continues, not because you're broken, but because you were told that being loving means being endlessly forgiving, that being empathetic means tolerating harm, that walking away is cruel and staying is noble. But real empathy doesn't abandon truth. It doesn't silence your voice just to preserve someone else's comfort. Empathy without accountability keeps systems of dysfunction alive. It trains the people around you to believe that your care is unconditional, not in a loving way, but in a way that says, no matter what you do, I'll stay, I'll excuse it, I'll carry it. That's not empathy, that's emotional captivity. So if you've been giving and giving, hoping that your understanding will be the thing that changes someone, but nothing's changing, maybe it's time to shift the question from how can I better understand them to how can I better protect me? Because true empathy holds space and standards. It says, I see your pain, but I won't let it become my prison. It says, I love you, but I will not accept this behavior. It says, your healing is your responsibility and mine is mine. Empathy is sacred. Keep offering it, but make sure you're offering it from a place of wholeness, not from a place of fear. When empathy is partnered with accountability, it becomes a force for transformation. When it isn't, it becomes a license for dysfunction. Choose wisely. We often mistake kindness for silence. We mistake politeness for patience. And we mistake avoidance for peace. But let me say this clearly. Clear boundaries are far more compassionate than passive kindness. Why? Because real kindness isn't about keeping things comfortable, it's about keeping them honest. Passive kindness is when we smile when we're uncomfortable. It's when we say it's fine when it's not. It's when we bite our tongues, hold our breath, and tell ourselves, it's not a big deal, I'll just let it go. We do it because we don't want to hurt anyone. We don't want to seem difficult. We don't want to risk disconnection. So we soften, we step aside, we go along to get along. But here's the truth. Kindness that costs your integrity isn't kindness, it's people-pleasing. It's emotional suppression disguised as grace. And over time, that kind of kindness becomes resentment. You start feeling invisible. You start shrinking in rooms where you should stand tall. You find yourself bending so far backwards just to avoid conflict that you forget what standing straight even feels like. But boundaries, clear, direct, and respectful, are a form of honest kindness. They say, I respect you enough to be real with you. I value this relationship enough to protect what's healthy within it. Love myself enough not to betray my needs in order to keep your comfort intact. That's compassion with a spine. That's love with a backbone. That's strength without cruelty. Clear boundaries don't push people away. They show people where you stand. And the right people, the people who truly care for you, won't be scared off by your boundaries. They'll be grateful for the clarity. They'll feel safer, not threatened. Passive kindness, on the other hand, often keeps people guessing. It allows small injuries to build into major breaks. It hides truth behind a smile and then wonders why no one sees the real pain behind our eyes. There is nothing compassionate about allowing harm just to avoid discomfort. There is nothing loving about tolerating disrespect just to appear easygoing. And there is nothing kind about sacrificing your self-worth on the altar of someone else's convenience. Boundaries say, this is okay and this is not. I can support you, but I won't be your emotional punching bag. I can be flexible, but I won't be flattened. I can love you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you happy. And when those boundaries are clear, not harsh, not reactive, just clear, they become a roadmap for healthy relationships. They show people how to love you, how to respect you, how to meet you in the middle without crossing the line. So if you're afraid that setting boundaries makes you mean, ask yourself this: is it more loving to lie with a smile or to speak with truth? You are not here to be agreeable at the cost of your soul. You are not here to perform harmony while your inner world falls apart. You are here to live with courage, to speak with love, and to walk in truth. And that begins with this simple but radical act, honoring your boundaries like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. There's a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes explosive, when you realize you're exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, soul deep tired. You've been performing, proving, explaining, shrinking, bending, and breaking, all in the hope that someone else's treatment of you would finally reflect what you know or wish to be true about yourself. You've handed them the pen and asked them to write your story. And every time they withdrew affection, blamed you, ignored your needs, or distorted your truth, your sense of self cracked just a little more. Because when someone else's behavior becomes the mirror you measure your worth against, your identity becomes tied to their dysfunction. And do this because somewhere along the line we learned that love must be earned, that value is proven through endurance, that if someone treats us poorly, we must not be enough, not lovable enough, not calm enough, not forgiving enough, not worthy enough. But that's a lie. Other people's inability to love you well is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their wounds. Still, we internalize it. Their withdrawal becomes our shame. Their criticism becomes our self-doubt. Their manipulation becomes our reality. We think if I were just better, more patient, more quiet, more available, maybe they'd love me right. Maybe they'd see me. But healing doesn't begin when they finally see you. Healing begins when you stop letting their inability to love you define your ability to love yourself. It begins when you step back and say, their behavior is a mirror of them, not a verdict on me. That's when the fog starts to lift. That's when you begin to unhook your self-worth from their validation. That's when you reclaim the truth that you are already enough and always were. And it's not always a clean break. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you fall back into old patterns. seeking approval from the very person who keeps breaking your spirit. That's okay. Be gentle with yourself. Healing is not linear, it's layered. But each time you stop apologizing for existing, each time you speak your truth, even if your voice trembles, each time you walk away from chaos instead of trying to calm it, each time you hold your ground instead of begging to be understood, you're rewriting your story. You're saying, I don't need you to approve of me for me to be okay. I don't need your consistency to know I'm lovable. I don't need to win your love to know I deserve it. That is the beginning of real healing, the kind that doesn't depend on someone else changing, the kind that doesn't wait for an apology that may never come, the kind that's rooted in truth, dignity, and radical self-respect. So here it is, the turning point. Your worth is not a debate. Their behavior is not your measure. And your healing begins the moment you stop waiting for them to change and start remembering who you are. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unlovable. You are enough. You are healing. You are home. And that is where everything begins. We were often taught explicitly or subtly that being good means being agreeable, that harmony